Hi, everyone. I'm Tammy Callis with Next Level Me. And today we're going to be talking about a topic that I think is important to many of us. And that is how do we keep it all in motion between work life, family, and still manage to have a little bit of personal time for ourselves? We talk a lot about balance, but I would venture to say that it goes deeper than that. What we're looking for is not necessarily balance as much as capacity and being able to keep everything moving that's important and still be able to have some time for ourselves. That's why I'm so excited to have Brendan Sullivan with us today. For those of you who know Brendan or who have listened to the interview that he and I did last year, you will know that he formerly was with BNY Mellon. He had a very successful career managing high-end wealth clients. He left all of that to reinvent himself and started not just one, but three different businesses. He is also a family man, so he is very familiar with the struggles that we are talking about today in terms of balancing both worlds. Welcome, Brendan. So glad to have you today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be back.
So we are going to start out with a few questions. Brendan is not going to pitch and he's not going to preach, and neither am I. We are going to reflect on really what it takes to stay grounded and to make sure that we are keeping everything moving the way it needs to, and still maintaining our sanity in the process, as well as being able to truly show up in our lives as opposed to just living them. So, Brittany, you ready to get started?
I am. Let's do it.
All right. So, the first question I have for you, just to give us some context. So, I mentioned you have three businesses. Tell us what a typical week looks like for you in regard to managing work, managing home, and still being able to have enough energy left for yourself. What does a typical week look like?
Oh boy. Yeah. I guess I'd start by saying I haven't yet experienced a typical week. I almost feel like every single week is somewhat unique in its own way. That there's portions of the day that are consistent, and there are portions of the day that are sort of occasional things and rare things and brand new things every single week is has been my experience, right? It just we said the three businesses, it's technically I have four. I don't know that it came up in the other conversation, but I actually have a financial services consulting business as well that I do a little bit on the side, in all the free time that I have. But the Sullivan Maintenance Group, right, is a property management business, and then we own a landscape business as well and a pool business. The landscape business is the piece that I acquired, so it's the largest component of it. So the truth is the majority of my time gets spent in that space, and that's where I see the most growth because I have the largest sort of footprint to start from in that space. Um, but I wake up about 4 o'clock every single day, 4 a.m. Eastern time, which is not much different than my old life. I used to wake up at 4:30. Now I wake up a little bit earlier. And, I start my day looking at my schedule, looking through emails, getting a sense for sort of what's on the agenda for the day, as well as the personal side of it, to your point, right? Is there an appointment that I have to be at? Is there some commitment that I have from a family perspective or a personal perspective that I need to account for? And trying to organize around that in the morning. That's how I start with of course a large cup of coffee in hand while I do it. And then I spend the majority of my day outside the house. I largely live in my car, going from place to place, following along with my team or teams rather, meeting new clients, meeting existing clients, talking to neighbors, doing all that I can to sort of be there and be present for my clients. And I do still use the term clients. It's a term that we used in the financial services world. Largely in the business I'm in today, we talk about people as customers. which to me implies a single transaction versus a client, which is an ongoing engagement. And the truth of the matter is that's what I bring to my clients is an ongoing engagement. So that's terminology I use. So a lot of it is an early start. Um, my arrival time at home varies by the day. Today I got home at 2 in the afternoon. Yesterday I got home at 7 o'clock at night. It just sort of depends what the day looks like. And then it's keeping, sort of track of everything that happened throughout the day. What are the follow-ups that I need to act on? I've always been a list person. I do lots of lists. I use my notes in my phone. I use notebooks, anything to sort of keep track of everything and then try to organize it at the end of the day. With hopefully a little break for dinner with my wife, a little time in the evening with her as well, and one of my two sons who still lives in the house with us. So it's a different day every day, I would say, is has been my experience to date. And quite honestly, I enjoy that. I enjoy the uniqueness of each day.
So I think you more than just established your qualifications to speak to us on this. So I'm exhausted just listening to you. So so tell me, has there ever been a time when you felt, and I'm sure you can say yes, there are many, Tammy would ask me to pick one, when you felt totally overwhelmed, and how did you go about recalibrating?
So absolutely. It doesn't happen every day. It doesn't even happen every week, but it definitely happens. It's not just once. It has happened multiple times. The most recent example that I'll give, and it pertains for anyone who's from Central Florida or is aware of what happened in Central Florida in really the end of January, early February. We experienced a very unusual low temperature event, and we effectively went below freezing for over 12 consecutive hours, which for anyone who lives outside of the Southeast or Arizona, Southern California, probably no big deal. There are days it never reaches zero, right, in the northern parts of the country. But for here, to get below freezing is rare. To get below freezing for an extended period of time is even more rare. And it, in the landscape business in particular, we're a tropical state. We have lots of tropical plants. We have lots of um, water systems that are not insulated the same way as they are up north. We have sprinkler systems in the ground that are just PVC pipes without any insulation. We have hoses on the side of the house that are not insulated. Um, it's a very different environment, and it seems sort of weird to complain that it went below freezing, so our world is blowing up. But that's kind of what happens here. Um, and when I got the news that the forecast was coming, the first thing I did was try to find the opportunity for my business in that. How can I help my clients and help myself at the same time? And so I reached out to everybody and I started explaining to them what's coming, what it means, the things they should be thinking about, and what we're able to do to help if they're interested. And the response was so overwhelming that it became very difficult for me to manage actually all of the inquiries and all of the requests for assistance. It was a very good business opportunity. It worked out very well from a preparation perspective, helping people put insulation on their hose bibs on the side of the house, telling them what to do with their irrigation systems, helping them cover tropical plants in the yard. That was overwhelming. It was the effect of it after the fact that was actually even more overwhelming because no matter what we did, it was so cold for so long. There was severe damage to people's landscapes across the area, probably across the entire state, but certainly from what I saw. And that has driven more and more business from clients over the past several weeks. What do we do about it? What's alive? What's not alive? What do we want to take out? I have multiple clients at this point that are literally looking to redesign their entire landscape. They want to tear everything out and start all over again. So that event was unique. It's not going to happen. I think the last one we had here at least was like 2010. So it's not something that happens very often. But it was overwhelming for sure. And I think that the key for me to get through it was to acknowledge the fact that it sounds simple, but you can really only do one thing at a time. right? People talk about multitasking and all this other stuff. I don't believe in multitasking. If you're multitasking, you're only paying attention to one of the things. So you're really switching between different tasks, not doing multiple tasks at the same time. So you have to be able to stay organized, and then you have to be able to switch from one thing to the next thing to the next thing and keep track of what you've done and what still has to get done to get through it all. And for me, that's something I've used throughout my entire career. It has helped me as a small business owner now, I think probably more than it's ever helped me in my professional career previously.
So that's a great lead in because one of the things I was going to ask you is what are the new things that you've learned in these business opportunities? And I'm gonna take it back to balancing between the two worlds. So what have you learned as you have taken on these new tasks from a business perspective that have helped you manage things differently from a family or personal perspective? And vice versa. What have you learned in terms of what works in terms of your family or personal life that you have actually brought into your business experience?
So I'll start with the second one, right? So I mean, my old world was a world of relationships, and quite honestly, most industries probably are, right? At the end of the day, most businesses are people businesses. Um, the way I interact with my family, the way I interact with my neighbors, and the people that I see throughout the day is the natural way in which I'd like to interact with my clients. I I tried to do that in my old world. It didn't always work, right? There's a lot of professional um, approaches. Well, maybe it's not the right way to say it, but there was a lot of way different people wanted to engage.
Protocol.
Yes, yes. There was a lot of instruction around the way to do things. There was a lot of sort of protocols to follow. Um, I'm a more casual engager. I like to just get to know people and talk to them and be honest with them. And I'm not going to sit and think for 20 minutes and write down notes and come up with a response to a question. If I get asked a question, I'm going to do my best to answer the question. So from the personal side, I've tried to bring the way I engage personally with people, whether it be family, neighbors, friends, whoever, into the way I engage with my clients. And I think it's been honestly very well received.
Probably
It's
refreshing.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of the reason why I picked this business to get into is because my own experience dealing with home service providers is the service experience is terrible. It's hard enough to get someone to call you back, let alone to show up on time or do quality work or give you an accurate bill or explain something correctly. Whereas in financial services, the service experience is everything. I mean, we catered to people and companies in ways that you wouldn't even be able to imagine. Trying to bring that approach to the home services business is sort of how I differentiate myself. And to that point, it's been well received. And some of that is to that point about how I engage with people. And I'm sorry, the first part of the question was learn from the business
Anything
and
that business has brought to your family, anything that you've learned there that has helped you in terms of like dealing with like balancing family obligations. You mentioned you still have a son at home. I don't know if he has activities you have to be engaged in, anything along those lines.
yeah, he's in college, so he pretty much is self-sufficient at this point, although he still asks me what we're making for dinner every night. So there's some engagement that goes along with it. I shouldn't say every night. Sometimes he cooks for himself, but um, yeah, every person you deal with has different perspective, right? So the clients that I've worked with, the different vendors that I've worked with, because I can't do everything myself. We have to find partners to work with on jobs sometimes. And clients asks for stuff, and you think about it and you say, well, it's not really what we do, but could we do it? Sure, we could figure out how to do that. So I like to say yes to people. And I think what I've learned is saying yes to something that you're not sure about sort of commits you to figuring out how to do it. And a lot of us sometimes start with no, and I don't like to do that. I never like to do that. But in family situations, sometimes we do that too, you know? So I think the biggest thing is to that point. It's just, being willingness to listen to people, what they want, do your best to try and deliver exactly what they're looking for, asking follow-up questions, whatever it takes to do it. That's not necessarily how we think about interacting with our family. But taking that approach for me, coming from a world where I traveled 3 nights a week on average, and I spent 100 nights in hotels every year and all that sort of stuff. I wasn't around as much. Um, I'm reinventing the way I engage with my family at this point in a very positive way.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely important point that you just made, and I had forgotten about that in terms of your prior job. It took you away from your family a lot. So, is
Yes.
this allowed in and of itself just by virtue of this career change that you made? I mean, I know you are still up at dawn and still out at dusk on some days, but do you feel like it's created more opportunity for you to have that time with the family and to be able to manage those family commitments than what you had in the past?
It definitely has, right? I mean, for, to be clear, I'm long gone from the house before anyone else is up, and I go to sleep long before everyone else goes to sleep. So I'm giving up some time from that perspective, maintaining different hours. But it's not just about being here, it's about being present when you're here too, right? I can come home and have that list of follow-ups that I talked about and sit in my home office or sit in the living room with my wife, but have my laptop open on my lap. And you're not really there when that happens, right? So it's finding the ability to sort of put one thing down and say, now it's time to stop for the night, and I'm going to engage with my family from here on out for the rest of the night. Same thing on weekends, finding the time on the weekends. Like all of us work probably more than 5 days a week. That's just the reality of life. Anyone in college coming into the professional career has to realize 9 to 5 doesn't exist.
Right.
Unless you're in an hourly job, and even then, it doesn't really exist, right? Um, so I think it's been about making sure that when I am here, I really am present here. I could be home working all evening, then come out, say goodnight, and go to sleep. I might as well be in a hotel in New York City. From my family's perspective, what's the difference? So I have had a lot more time, but I've actually tried to be more present during the time that I have as well, which again was one of the reasons behind why I made the shift in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's extremely important. And I think the point that you just made in regard to being able to set those boundaries and abide by them. Setting them is one thing. Abiding by them is something else entirely, which I'm still trying to become more proficient at myself, for certain. So we talked about family. How do you manage to still find ways to personally energize yourself? And then I want to kind of take that into, I know you and
Yep.
I talked about some practices that you use to help kind of calibrate everything, but I want to talk first about how do you make sure that you're carving out time to the point that you can be re-energized and make sure that you aren't burning out for everybody else.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part of all, right? Because I think it's much easier for us to sacrifice our own personal mental state or whatever it might be than it is to sacrifice it of your family or of your business, right?
Right.
Um, to some extent, I came into this with the mindset, and to be honest, I'm 8.5 months in. Like this all started July 1st, right? So this is not that new yet or that old yet. I came in recognizing that I was going to have to sacrifice a little bit up front to actually build what I really wanted to build. Some of what's important to me personally is demonstrating the ability to do that. So I am getting a little bit of self support, having
Mhm.
success in what it is that I'm doing. Now that's not the same as actually finding time for yourself, but it helps. It helps me, at least in my own head, justify not having as much time as I would like to have. But I've also never been a person that needed all that time. So I try to find a little bit of time, that time in the morning by myself when I'm up, because I do wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays too. I don't know why. I don't even set alarms anymore, to be honest with you. Like I wake up, and if I don't, one of my dogs nudges me because he likes to jump in the bed when
It's
I get
used to
up, and
getting up then.
now he knows it's 4 o'clock, and I guess he doesn't know the difference between Saturday and Tuesday. Um, but having that quiet time where I can just be with my own thoughts in the morning is really, really helpful. And maybe the extra hour of sleep would be nice, and then I could stay up an hour later in the evenings. But the reality is I like that quiet time. Um, the other thing that I like to do, and I find time to do it every single weekend, believe it or not, living in Florida, no matter how hot it is, my backyard we have a pretty big backyard, and we have a nice little fire pit in the back. And I like to just sit back by the fire and relax. And maybe I'll bring my iPad out and I'll watch some Netflix show, or I'll bring my iPhone out and I'll listen to a podcast, or just something to sort of take an hour disconnected from everything else. And whether it's with myself, whether my son joins me, whether my wife joins me, it's still giving me that personal satisfaction that that we all need some of, right? When you get the time, it doesn't have to be by yourself, but it has to be doing something that makes you feel relaxed and gives you the opportunity to sort of rest and reset.
So between your morning time and your fire pit time, would you say that would that be the practice or the approach that you would say is your primary go-to, or is there something else that you do kind of at the beginning of the week or on Sunday night or anything
Yeah.
to kind of establish that mindset for where you're going to go and how you're going to be using your time throughout the week?
Oh no, and my Sunday morning is the time that, we sort of talked about getting overwhelmed and all this other things, right? Like understanding what's ahead and figuring out what's important so that you can make sure you can allocate the time for all these other steps is really the most important part to me. And honestly, it's probably, I don't want to say it's the only thing that keeps me going, but it is one of the most important things that allows me to get through each week. Is setting up, sort of looking at what is it that I actually have to do this week? What's on my agenda? Can I do it all? Um, what's most important? What's least important? What has to be done? What can potentially wait till next week? Where can I prioritize things to make sure that I'm accomplishing the stuff that's most important to get completed versus the things that they're less important. And if I get to them, terrific. But if I don't, it's okay. It can wait until next week. That's my Sunday morning exercise. And I don't think, I mean, look, I would recommend this to anybody to spend a little time thinking about your week, whether you do it Sunday morning at 4 o'clock, you do it Sunday night, you do it Monday morning, whatever works for you. Um, but looking ahead so that you're prepared for the week has really been something that's helped me the most. Um, it's not a formal process. I don't go through a checklist. There isn't anything, sort of detailed about it. Sometimes I make notes to it. Sometimes I'll update my schedule and calendar about it. Sometimes it's more mental notes. But it's about preparation. It's about trying to limit the surprises because things are always going to come out of the blue that you're going to have to deal with. But I don't have to have those things that I could have prevented from popping up, right? So this gives me the opportunity to sort of make sure I have everything I'm aware of organized and under control. So I only have to deal with surprises that are outside of my current knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's a phenomenal practice. It's one of the things that until I formed this company, I did religiously, and I have gotten away from it a little bit, until the beginning of this year. And I realized that having that and being able to know, I call it my to-do list, knowing what my to-do list and my critical items and everything are for the week, and then being able to deselect, like you said, prioritize what's important, make sure that I've got all the big rocks covered before the little rocks come in, to use an old Stephen Covey concept. And then to really stick to that and back to that fulfillment that you were talking about in terms of success, I get a real charge out of being able to check that item off that list, get
Yeah,
my
and look,
check marks.
technology can help, right? There's lots of different tools out there. And for
Yep.
me running businesses, there's lots of billing activities and appointment activities and engagement activities and things that finding the right technology solution for whatever it is that you're doing can really save you a lot of time.
Yeah,
It's
agreed.
that time of year I'm meeting with an accountant Honestly, for the first time. I've always done my own taxes. This is the first time I'm not doing my own taxes. And having an organization around software and they're again, I raised it because they want to take over my bookkeeping. Of course, they're trying to cross-sell me something else too, right? That's what we all do, including me.
Right.
But having the right technology in place to take care of the things that can be time consuming so that you can focus your attention on the most important things. Because there are things that you have to do that doesn't make them all equally important, right? So what can you automate? What can you find some partner or solution that can limit the amount of time or reduce the amount of time you have to spend on it? That's a huge advantage. I use three or four different softwares that are all integrated together, and it has given me a lot more time to focus on the stuff that's most important and not taking away the time that I can spend for myself or for my family as well.
Yeah, I think that's key. It's delegate, eliminate, aggregate, all of those gates, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to open it up to anyone on the call that has a question for Brendan, and he said he's game to answer whatever from whatever aspect. So if you guys have anything, feel free to come off mute and ask away.
Can't guarantee I can answer. I can certainly try though.
You said you don't say no, so.
That's true. That's true.
I have
That's
a
the question,
question,
Brandon.
Brandon. If I don't know that I completely understood what you were doing before and how that maybe dissatisfaction or overwhelm or just too much time away. What
Yep.
was it that pushed you to decide to do something different? And how did you decide what that different was? What was the bridge to the next life
Well, that's a
for you?
that's a great question, and it's an easy one for me too. So thank you for the softball. Uh, when I graduated college 30 years ago, I started working for at the time I think it was Donaldson, Lufkin and Rhett Securities, but it was a financial services firm that went through a series of ownership changes over the years. And until last June 30th, I still worked for that same company. So my entire adult life, I spent working for the same organization for effectively 29 years, almost 29 full years. And I held different roles within the company. I came in an entry level position and I reached a very senior level position. I was a managing director when I decided to pursue something else. Um, Part of my journey was going through different roles in different teams and doing different things. The last job I had with them before I left was a senior client executive. So I was engaging with um, CEOs and executive leadership from large global national insurance firms, banks, companies like that on their wealth management business. None of them are in Lake Mary, Florida, where I am. They're all in different parts of the country, sometimes different parts of the world. So I spent a lot of time, and again, this is me not being able to say no. When the client gives you an opportunity to go to their office, I booked my flight, booked my hotel, and I went and visited their office. And that was to the tune of close to 100 nights a year for 4 or 5 years. It's exhausting. My wife used to say she wishes she could travel more so that, she can have the quiet time in the hotels. Once you do it, you won't wish for it. It's a very difficult life for sure. And it's not the quiet time in the hotel, it's the delays in the airports and sitting in traffic in a Uber or something, right? Um, I think I reached a point in my career where I sort of felt like I had kind of done everything that I set out to do, and it was time to do something different. And I didn't see the opportunity to do that different within the company. And look, a lot has changed. Company changes. That happens to everybody. For me, and I think Tammy, we talked about this last time around. My father actually worked for the same company for 12 or 15 years, something like that. Long before me, obviously working there. And then he left to work with someone he used to work with in a small firm, and then he started his own business. And for the last 40 years, he's run his own business, working out of the house, traveling when he wants to travel. Um, and I've always been somewhat interested in that concept, the idea of answering only to yourself versus to a large corporate organization was appealing. I will say I wasn't certain what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to do it for myself. I wanted to be in a position where if I put in extra effort and achieved greater results because of it, that I would receive the benefit. That happens in corporate America, I'm sure, but there's really no way to know whether it's really happening, right? Because if you do a great job this year, you sign new clients, you bring in new business, whatever it might be, in theory, your salary goes up and your bonus goes up. Does it really translate? It's not only about you, right? And I wanted to be in a position, I thought I was in a good space to be in a position where I could set my own path. So I wanted to reduce the travel. I wanted to be accountable for my own results and recognize the benefit directly for my own efforts. And I wanted to start to prove that I can start something for myself and make it successful. I think those are really the driving forces behind it.
Awesome. Anyone else have a question? I'll volley off Sherry's question to what you were just responding to, Brendan.
Sure.
So, so you shared this with me before. What ultimately led you to make the decision to go into the things that you're doing now? And you alluded to it in one of your questions earlier in regard to and I love the white glove service analogy that you used in the past conversation.
I use it in the name of one of the businesses too, actually. Um, yeah, so I did talk about it a little bit before, right? In the business that we were in as client executives, it was our job to effectively create experiences for our clients. And what I mean by that is when you host them for a meeting, it wasn't just setting a time, having them show up, meeting them in the lobby, going to a conference room. It was everything from signage in the building, the right people to meet them. In some cases, we actually reserved elevators. So there was a person waiting by the elevator that was ready to take them to the floor that they needed to go to. Um, Branding of their company and our company done together. We would even get coffee orders based on what we investigated and learned in terms of what people liked from a coffee perspective. Or maybe they don't like coffee at 2 in the afternoon, but they like it at 4. So guess what? The coffee is going to come at 4. Um, the way that we approached servicing clients on the little things that don't necessarily make or break something, but they leave an impression, right? When the people leave the room or leave the meeting or leave for the day. Um, and I mentioned earlier, in the home services business, look, I'm a homeowner. I've been a homeowner for a long time. I've been challenged all of that time with finding service providers who will even call you back the same day that you call them, right? Let alone deliver the product that you're buying from them or the service that you're buying from them. Live up to their commitments, show up on time, get the billing right. No, it's not a space I think where they think about customer service in the way that I've thought about customer service over my career. So I saw a real opportunity to differentiate in the way that we deliver home services to homeowners. And that's the way we've been marketing the business. That's the way we've been selling the business. It's the way that and I can say this, knock on wood, I'm probably gonna jinx myself. It's the way I haven't lost a single client that I've either acquired or signed since the business started. And the majority of the client relationships have grown. They're using us for more and more services because as they see the way we deliver the service that they sign up for, they want to see if we can deliver other services because they're struggling to get those services delivered from other companies. How much more can we do for them? And that's really been one of the big growth engines for me, honestly. It's expanding beyond the original service into secondary services, and then being able to turn around, demonstrate that we can deliver them, and now cross-sell them, or at least make sure other clients know that we are now in that space and can help them if they want. Um, that's really what it is. And you mentioned the white glove. The property management business was a startup. We started up a pool maintenance business underneath it. I acquired a landscaping business underneath that. And the landscaping business is actually called White Glove Lawn and Landscape. So we are using that white glove in the actual name of the business.
Very cool. Very cool. And I just I want to point out this is obviously about kind of keeping things in motion, but I think this is a critical component to bring into the equation. You'd never run a landscaping business before. You'd never run a pool maintenance business before. Or you'd never run a property management business before. That didn't preclude you from taking all of the skills that you had and everything that you had learned and all of your experiences that you had had in the past and transferring those skills into these new businesses to be
Yeah.
successful.
I mean, look,
I think that's one of the biggest fear factors that kind of hold people back from doing something new is that, well, I've never done that before. How can I possibly do that? And you are proof that you can do it and do it well.
I appreciate that. I mean, if there were one thing I would want people to take away when you think about your skills, we think about them in terms of how we're using them, not what they actually are, right? And the reality is just because you're applying a skill in a specific way doesn't mean that skill can't be applied in other ways, that it can't translate to other things or other industries or other practices or whatever it might be, right? You have to trust and look, we're not all born with these skills. We learn these skills, we develop these skills, we hone them over time. We never end the ability to do that either. But the skill set we have is being used in whatever you're doing today, your skill set's being used in a very specific way. Your skill set is capable of doing other things too. It's a matter of trusting in yourself that that's the case and that you figured out how to do it in the past. Why can't you do it again? There's a lot of that in me still today where I can't say no, saying yes to people. Um, we're going to figure it out. That's what I do. My whole career, I figured it out, and we're going to keep doing the same thing. And that's the fun in it for me, honestly, is seeing that there isn't really any limits in terms of what you're capable of doing if you give yourself the opportunity to try.
Yeah, I think that's a great concept. All right, any other questions from anyone? Okay, so we have a tool that I am dropping the link in the chat. Brendan mentioned doing a reset process, and this is a 10-minute Sunday reset. It is designed to help you kind of incorporate some of the concepts that we've talked about today and to be able to have a tool that you can put somewhere at whatever time of day you decide to kind of help you establish kind of what you're looking for. So I am going to drop that in the chat right now, and that will be available to you guys if you want to pull that down. And thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you being here. I have been recording this, so for those that wanted to join and didn't have a chance to, the recording will be available and will be made available to you. And Brendan, I can't thank you enough. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. You are always such an inspiration to me personally, and I know to everyone who listens to you. So I hope you have continued success, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. And I feel the same way. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night. Bye bye.